thing that we have learned throughout this series is that Jesus never called his followers Christians. In fact, in the first century, that term Christian was actually meant as a derogatory term towards those that were following the way of Jesus. Jesus, in fact, called his followers something quite different, and it had a much different meaning. And this is the first fill-in on your notes. I would encourage you, if you're taking notes, grab those out today with us and fill this in. But that we are called to be disciples, right? That's what Jesus called us, disciples. The ones who pattern their lives after the way of Jesus. The followers of Jesus are really disciples, those that pattern their lives after the way of Jesus. And wearing a Christian label and living any way you want versus being a disciple and patterning your life after the way of Jesus are two totally different things. So through this series, we've been trying to figure out, how do we mesh these things back together? That when your neighbor, when a coworker hears that you're a Christian, they don't have to ask, not like, what kind of Christian are you, right? Do you believe such and such or such and such and such? Because it's gotten so blurred, and throughout the series, we've wanted to define this for us. You see, for the first followers of Jesus, for them, it was not a label. It was something that defined every part of their life. And because of it, this happened. Look at the screen. You are looking at the heart of Rome. And what you will find almost on top of every building throughout Rome is what? A cross. That is amazing. You say, Ryan, I don't understand. They're Catholic. Of course, they're going to have a cross. What is your point? My point is that 2,000 years ago in this very city, they were dragging Christians from their homes, from their hiding places, and bringing them to the Colosseum where the Christians were killed for sport. 22 years ago, I was in Rome on a college trip, and I got to visit the Colosseum. And I saw the chambers underneath the ground where they would hold the lions and where they would hold the soldiers and where they would hold the prisoners, AKA those that were following the way of Jesus. I saw the places above the upper parts of the Colosseum where they would take the Christians and bind them up with rope, pour oil or kerosene all over them, light them on fire as light for the Colosseum so the games could continue at night. Rome was a place that hated Christianity, that hated the way of Jesus. And how could it be? What are the chances that in less than 300 years' time, that Christianity would become Rome's religion and crosses would be put all over the country, reminding them of the life, death, and resurrection of this man? What are the odds? I mean, in fact, if you were to visit there today, everywhere you are reminded of the life of Jesus. Everywhere. And place that once killed the Christians are now the ones saying, he's the way. How did that happen? It happened because the early Christians lived out the way of Jesus. They patterned their lives after him. It wasn't just a label for them. No, their lives actually were dedicated to this thing. And if you've ever wondered why we're losing ground in our culture and in our society, it's because in many cases, we've settled for a label over love. We've settled for a label instead of love in action. We've been happy to engage in petty arguments instead of leading with truth and grace. We thought that the label would be enough, that our actions wouldn't matter, that the world wouldn't even notice, and yet they have. And now we're paying a price. I mean, how was it by love and determination that the first century followers of Jesus were able to keep Christianity alive? I'm telling you what, the fact that Christianity even survived the first century is a miracle in and of itself. How is it that they were able to change a political force so powerful that they would turn and acknowledge Jesus as the way to follow? And how can we do the same? How can we do the same? How can we have that kind of influence in our culture? How can we have that kind of influence in our country? Well, Jesus sets this up for us. And in Matthew chapter 5, he begins to list the things that he says, hey, as a follower of mine, these would be good things for you to step into. These would be good behaviors to live by. And this resonated for them in the first century, and this resonates for us today. And so here's Jesus. Hundreds of people have gathered to hear him speak, and he's about to tell them this plan of how can we retain influence from now until eternity here on planet Earth. And so we pick up this story in Matthew chapter 5, right away in verse 1. It says this: Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. Right now what we're about to read, it's been known as, the List of Beatitudes. Here's Jesus. Here he is on this mountainside. And I got to tell you, before I tell you what he taught, what Jesus is about to say actually comes off a little weak, right? Comes off so passive. In fact, if you were wanting to start a movement, this is not how I would start a movement. This is not what I would lead with, but this is what Jesus led with. All right, and we see it kind of worked out for him. But anyway, this is not how you and I would probably do this, because it just comes off as so like, really? That's it? That's how we're going to do this thing? And here's what Jesus taught them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek," in other words, the gentle, the humble, the considerate. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness or right living, for they will be filled. They'll be filled with what? They'll be filled with righteousness. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers. And we know there's a big difference between peacekeeping and peacemaking. Jesus is saying, I want you to be peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil things against you because of me. Doesn't that sound wonderful? He says, rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. Again, he's always steering our attention eternally and not just temporally here on earth. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. How's that for a beginning marching order, right? All right, so Jesus, so you're saying that you want us to be poor, sad, meek, righteous, merciful, pure, peaceful, persecuted, insulted people waiting for a reward in heaven. That's what you're going with. I mean, after reading that list, I'd much rather just be an American Christian, right? I'd much rather just wear a label and say I'm a Christian and live any way I want. But Jesus is saying for those who have decided to follow me, there's much more to it than a label that you could wear. This is about how you live your everyday life. So what is Jesus saying? He's teaching his followers and us an important lesson that would actually span the test of time, that would reach all the way into 2022 for you and I. This would be the reason that Christianity would remain. He says after instructing them on how to live, he says, because of you who are followers of mine, who choose to pattern their lives after me, who choose to live at this list of things I just got done saying, I'm inviting you into these spaces to live in this way. If you will do that, this is what he says in the very next verse, 5:13, you are the salt of the earth. You are the salt of the earth. Ryan, I thought we were Christians or disciples. What do you mean we're salt? Well, you are that too, but you're also salt. Why salt? Why would Jesus say you are the salt of the earth? Well, salt was used as a preservative to keep food from spoiling, to keep it from rotting. Salt also added flavor to whatever it was they were eating. But this preservation was at the heart of what Jesus was talking about. That you, your next fill in salt, that you are the preservative of the earth. You are the preservers of the earth. As followers of mine, when you live in this way, you are the ones preserving society. You are preserving a moral ethic. It's the ingredient that keeps the world from rotting faster than it is. Now, I learned about the power of salt the hard way. When I was about 15 years old, I decided to make chocolate chip cookies all on my own. My mom and dad were gone, and I got the bag of the chocolate chips, and it's got the recipe on the back. Now, being 15 years old, I did not quite understand the difference between a teaspoon and a tablespoon. I thought they were all one and the same. So when on the ingredients it said add 2 teaspoons of salt, I added 2 tablespoons of salt. Now, they still smelled wonderful. They looked wonderful. But when you bit into those cookies, you realize that something was very wrong from the beginning. Like, this is not right. I mean, all you could taste was salt. It was just horrible, right? Can you be too salty? Right? Even as a follower of Jesus, I talked about this a couple weeks ago, right? The person standing on the milk crate outside the Twin Stadium holding the sign saying, God hates you unless you turn to him. Right? There can almost be so much salt that it becomes unpleasant. But Jesus says, as my followers, you are going to be the flavor that they experience when it comes to knowing who I am. In fact, you're going to be the preservers of the earth because of how you live your life. You're going to preserve this moral ethic. And I know that we like to look around our culture now and say, wow, there's so much evil going on around us. But to be honest, if you went back to the first century, you'd be shocked at the moral decay that was happening. You'd be shocked over the political decay that you saw. I mean, the rich ruled over the poor. The powerful ruled over the weak. Compassion was a sign of weakness. Men ruled over women and children. Slavery was acceptable. Right and wrong would be determined by the king. Whatever he said goes, goes. And here's what's so fascinating to me. That at the heart of the teachings of Jesus is a worldview that is normal for us because we live in America. We live in a nation that was founded in part on Christian principles and this Christian ethic and Christian morality that has guided our laws and our ethics even to this day, and we don't even realize it. We just take it for granted. But can I tell you that the Christian ethic that we have here in America is not shared among many around the world? I want you to think about some of these ideas of these ethics. Let me just list a few of them. This idea that there's only one God. It's unique. All men and women are created in the image of God and have intrinsic value. In many ways, it's unique to us. That women are not inferior to men. That dignity goes beyond one's political power or social capital. That the strong are to defend the weak. That the rich are to be generous to the poor. That forgiveness, not revenge, must govern our relationships. That the marriage covenant is sacred. And that all will give an account for the way they live their lives. Could you imagine a culture in which all of that was removed? Imagine a world. What that would look like. I mean, come on. We look at that and we go, well, yeah, I mean, this is so much common sense. But it's not. Here's what we have to remember, and this is your next fill-in, that the moral fabric of our culture is the leftovers of a Christian ethic. Any moral fabric that you see in our culture is the leftovers of a Christian ethic. I mean, if you look outside of our Western culture, I've been to China. I've been to India. I've been to communist countries. I've been in places where you can go to jail for even owning a Bible. Think about what's happening in Afghanistan. That if you don't believe like they believe, they'll just cut your head off. I mean, this is what's happening outside of the Western world. And yet we take it for granted. We don't realize that all around the world there's honor killings, there's churches that are being burned in Muslim countries, there's human trafficking, there's persecution, there's death. There's no freedom. That's why our country it's so incredibly, we should feel blessed and special to feel a part of it. But it's also why this Christian label must be rebranded so that we can preserve the way of Jesus around us. So what has Jesus said? He says, if you're a disciple, if you're a follower of mine, it's up to you. You are now the salt of the earth. You are now the preservers of the way of Jesus. You're the preservers of the Christian ethic. You're the preservers of the list of Beatitudes that Jesus invites us into in a way to live our lives. And you might think to yourself, Ryan, there's no way that I could make a difference. There's no way that I could really be salt and light. But it's true. As a follower of Jesus, your next fill-in, you may think you have no standing, but you are the last stand. You may think you have no standing, but you are the last stand. Jesus is saying that your presence will make a difference. You're the salt, the preservers of the earth, the ones who will model to the world what it means to follow Jesus. So for all of these people who are sitting on the hillside listening to Jesus, this is like brand new information. I mean, this is totally different than everything they've been raised with. This is a whole new way to live your life. Jesus invites them into these Beatitudes. He calls them the salt of the earth. And then he continues in the very next verse and he says, let me put it another way. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. This word built in the Greek could also be the word called placed. A town placed on a hill cannot be hidden. Jesus says that's what you are. You're like a strategically placed city on a hilltop. You're the light for me, the light for people to see. You've been positioned where you are on purpose. You've been positioned at your school on purpose. You've been positioned in your neighborhood on purpose. You've been positioned at your workplace on purpose. You've been going to that same barista at Starbucks for 10 years on purpose. Because God is asking you to be the light of the world. And so your next fill-in, it might feel random, but God has placed you where you are to be a light. God has placed you where you are to be a light. Verse 15, he continues. He expands upon this thought. And he says, neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. I mean, how stupid would that be? No one lights a lamp and puts it under a bowl. No, instead, they put it on its stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. That light it's light for everyone in the house. It's nice to see all those people taking notes on their phones. Look at that, that's wonderful. I mean, you look around you and you can see little pieces of light that are piercing the darkness. But the truth is that light always pierces the darkness. And everybody that is around the light is impacted by the light. You may think in your school that your light isn't making a difference. You might say, Ryan, you don't even know how dark it is at my school, spiritually, morally. And to that we say, wonderful, because the light shines the brightest in the darkest places. You might say, Ryan, you don't even know how dark my workplace is. How wonderful that you get to be the one to bring light into the darkness. As we said last week, There is no such thing as a darkness dial, the darkness that if you just turn up the darkness enough that it could overcome the light. Darkness can never overcome the light. The light always overcomes the darkness. Light always pierces through the darkness and impacts those that's around. And Jesus is saying that you are the light of the world. No one would light a lamp and put a bucket over it. No, instead, that light impacts everyone that it comes in contact with. Look at what he says in this next verse, verse 16. He says, in the same way as that light shines and pierces the darkness, let your light shine before others. Let your life shine before others that they may see your political views. Isn't that what it says? That they may see your anger on any one given situation. That's not what it says. That they may see your good deeds. That they may see your love. That they may see the truth and the grace. That they might see that the way that you live your life is so different that it causes them to glorify your Father in heaven. In other words, they see something so different in you that they go, I want that. I want that in my life. I want that kind of peace, and I want that kind of joy, and I want that kind of work ethic, and I want that kind of integrity, and I want that kind of hope. And it causes them to lean towards your Father in heaven. See, everyone around us, in your neighborhood, in your friend groups, in school, and home, your neighborhood, they will see the way that you love people. They will see the way that you treat people. They will see the way you speak of people. They will see the way that you forgive people. They will see your honesty and integrity and loyalty and kindness and grace and peacemaking and generosity and compassion and empathy, and it will cause them to turn their hearts towards the thing that has made a difference in your life. This man named Jesus. See, they're smart enough to connect the dots in your life that you're a follower of Jesus. Let me ask you a question. If I went into your workplace and I asked your coworkers, if you're a follower of Jesus, would they be able to connect the dots based on how you live your life? If you're a middle schooler or a high schooler, could I go into your school and ask your peer group, would you know that they're a follower of Jesus? Based on how the words that come out of their mouth, based on how the choices they make, the integrity they have. Right? Could I go into your friend group? Could I go into your neighborhood, wherever you're living, into your extended family? Could they see a difference in you, a light that is shining because of how you live your life? See, we're the light of the world. When they experience that kind of light, they'll want to follow Jesus. So as we kind of wrap this whole series up, here's my challenge for us this morning. It's your next fill-in. I would just say, don't settle for Christian. Be salt and be light. Be salt and be light. Don't just settle for a label. Say, I'm going to pattern my life after this thing so that people can see the light in my life, so that I can help preserve the ethic of Jesus. Because you are. Whether you knew it before you came in here or not, you really are the salt of the earth. A preservative in a world that would rot without you. You're a light strategically placed to draw attention to your Father in heaven. You may not think you are where you are on purpose, but God has ordered your steps. It's not an accident where you work or where you live, where you go to school. Be a light like someone was for you. Because the truth is, your next fill-in, if you were a follower of Jesus, it was because somebody was salt and light to you. Who was it for you? Who did you cross paths with that invited you to church, who shared Jesus with you? Who did God place in your life so that you could be here today? Was it just coincidence? Or was there salt and light strategically placed by God to make a difference in your life? Have you ever thought about that? For students who are growing up in a Christian home with a mom and dad who are patterning their lives after Jesus, that's not on accident, that's on purpose. You've watched it with your life. So you may not think that God is using you, but he is. Everywhere you go, God is wanting to use you in someone's life who needs salt and light, who needs a flavor of Jesus, who needs some preservation of an ethic they don't live by, a light that shines into their darkness. You're the salt and light of your middle school, of your high school, or your college. You're the salt and light of your company. You're the salt and light of the real estate industry. You're the salt and light of General Mills and Home Depot and Starbucks and US Bank and the doctor's office. You are the salt and light of the world. And you might say, Ryan, I'm just one person. I mean, come on, no one's really paying attention. It's not true. Salt always preserves, and light always shines. Light can always be seen. And you are men and women and young men and women who will shine so bright that the world can't help but notice that there is something different about you. You're lighting up the office, you're lighting up the neighborhood, you're lighting up the team, you're lighting up the school. God is using you to shine in the darkness. Well, Ryan, how again? Yeah, I mean, I get it. We're salt, we're light. Jesus is calling this to. I mean, how again are we supposed to do this? Remember, we just read in verse 16, in the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Isn't that what they said? Right? That they may see your good deeds. John says, by your love, they will know that you're my followers. By your love for one another, they will know that you're my disciples, the way that we love and treat those around us. And so your very last fill-in, in a world of decay and darkness, let's be the ones to preserve and shine. In a world full of decay and darkness, in a culture, in a school, in a workplace full of decay and darkness, let's be the ones to preserve and shine. May they see your good deeds. May they see the ethic in which you live. May they see the love you have for people around you, even those that are different for you and don't fit into your worldview. How you love one another will make a difference. Jesus says, you are the salts of the world. You're the light of your world. And I got to tell you, that is better than a Christian label, isn't it? Because this has the power to change people around you. So let's spend a minute just praying together, can we? Would you mind just closing your eyes all over this room? And if you're watching online, go ahead and close your eyes wherever you're watching from. And I just want us to take 30 seconds in this moment, 30 seconds between you and God, to just ask the question, God, how am I doing in preserving your ethic? How am I doing in preserving your way of living? How am I doing in being a light for you? Just 30 seconds between you and God. Let's do that right now. And if you're here this morning and you're ready to let the light of Jesus in, maybe you haven't asked for his forgiveness, but you want to follow him. You're ready to let him be the leader of your life. If you're in that spot, whether you're watching online or in the room, I want to invite you into a prayer. And you can just repeat this prayer right from where you're sitting so quietly. Just repeat this. Dear Jesus, thank you for loving me and for accepting me just as I am. Thank you for dying for me and rising again. I'm asking for your forgiveness and for you to live inside of me. today I'm making you the leader of my life. And I want to pattern my life after you. I want to follow you. In Jesus' name I pray. And Heavenly Father, for all of us, if we're honest, it's so much easier to wear a label than it really is to live this out. To be the salt and the light that you've called us to be. And I just ask that tomorrow morning when we wake up, by your Spirit, you'd help remind us that wherever we're leaving to, we're called to be the light in the darkness, to be preservers of the ethic and the way that you gave to us. So I ask that you'd give us the wisdom to know what's right, and you'd give us the courage to do what's right. The courage to live it out in such a way that it would cause the world to take notice that the label Christian doesn't mean what it used to mean, but they're full of people that have so much love and grace and truth and an incredible ethic in every area of their life to live out. Would you help us make a difference, I pray. Give us opportunities this week, whether it's school or work, in our neighborhoods, in a conversation with friends. God, give us an opportunity this week to be light for you, to speak truth into a situation, to speak love, to speak grace, an opportunity to share what you've done in us. Thank you for entrusting us with this. May we make you proud as we call ourselves disciples, followers, and Christians. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.